Our unit for today is going to be on factor dimensional analysis number 1. And so in this unit we are going to look at factor dimensional analysis. And factor dimensional analysis is something that we saw to some extent earlier where we did our metric conversions, but deals primarily with the idea of how to convert from one type of unit to another by using the units themselves to tell you how to do that. Remember, we talked about before that oftentimes you're doing conversions, it is difficult to figure out whether you multiply or divide by the conversion factor. Factor dimensional analysis uses the units to tell you exactly which one to do. Now, to do this, you want to make sure that you have your colored sheet titled Common English Units of Measure. So make sure you have that out and ready to use. All right. So as we said, factor dimensional analysis basically says this: the conversions are determined based on units. And so best way to look at this is actually just to work out examples. So let's start off with one. We say convert 5 yards to inches. And so to do this, the first thing we want to do is we want to once again look for the number that we were given, the unit and value, 5 yards in this case. So we say 5 yards is the first bit that we say here. The next question is, how do we get from yards to inches? Well, this is where you're going to use your Common English Units of Measure sheet. Now, first question you want to ask as you sort of try to figure out how to get from yards to inches, and most of you probably have an idea how to do this without having to look at the sheet, but we're going to work our way through it. Is yards going to be part of the American customary system, which is what we're going to call the English system here, just for short note-taking thing, or is it going to be the SI system, or we'll sort of shorten it as metric? And that's what's used on your Common English Units of Measurement sheet. And so in this case, yards is English. That's sort of common. That's not a metric unit. Inches is not metric either, so that's English. And so given that's the fact, you should be able to find something that's fairly easy to go between these. And looking at this, we can say, well, we start off with yards. We want to end up in inches. Best way to do that? Well, if you look at this, we say yards. Where does yards show up on here? Well, we say that yards, we can go to feet. Man, that's the only place that yard shows up. And then so we say, we know we can go from yards to feet. Can we go from feet to inches? Absolutely. And so that's going to be the path we're going to take. We're going to go from 5 yards to feet, then to inches. So to do that, we set up our table. We say yards like this. We're going to put yards on bottom because we want to cancel. We want to go to feet, as we said. And then we look at the colored sheet and say, all right, how many feet in a yard? And so it says 3 feet are equal to 1 yard, so we say 3 feet in 1 yard, and then at that point, as we said before, that's going to allow yards to cancel, and now we've just got feet. So now we can go from feet to what we want, which is inches. So we continue our table. We want to cancel feet. We want to go to inches. How many inches in a foot? 12 inches in 1 foot. Once again, we look at our units that cancel. The only unit that remains here is going to be inches, and so at this point we can go ahead and get our calculators out, multiply across the top, divide by the bottom, so we have 5 times 3 times 12 divided by 1 divided by 1, and in doing so you get that the answer is 180 inches. Now, there is one thing you want to consider when you're coming through these, and that's significant figures. We said before that conversion factors, the 3 and the 12, don't affect significant figures for this class, but the original number does. And so the original value, 5 yards, has one significant figure. That means that our answer also has to have one significant figure. That's going to take it to the hundreds place. And so our actual answer we're going to get here is going to be 200 inches. And that's for the simple reason that it looks like you say, well, if I had 5 yards, that should be 180 inches. But 5 yards could be anything from 4.5 yards to 5.5. So this is why we're going to have 200 for this one. Let's look at our next one. Convert 9.4 quarts to cups. So we start off, write out what we've got here. We've got 9.4 quarts. So we'll set up our table like that. But we have to go from quarts to cups. How do we do that? Well, once again, let's take a look at our conversion sheet. We know we start off here with quarts. We want to go to cups. And so looking on this, let's look for where it talks about quarts. We see that we can convert from quarts to liters, but we don't want to do that because quarts is English and cups is English. So these are going to be two English things. So what else? Quarts, we can go to pints. Quarts to gallons. Well, a cup's smaller than a quart, so we don't want to go to gallons. Pints would work though, so let's go from quarts to pints. And then can we go from pints to cups? Oh, absolutely. There's a conversion on your sheet from pints to cups. And so this is going to be the pattern we're going to take. First, we want to cancel quarts. We want to go to pints. We look at things and we say that there is 1 quart is 2 pints, like that. We're then going to continue this. We want to cancel pints. We want to go to cups. How many cups are in a pint? 2 cups in 1 pint. At this point, let's look at our units. Quarts is gone. Pints is gone, leaving only cups. Once again, take out your calculators. We have 9.4, multiply across the top, divide by the bottom. So 9.4 times 2 times 2 divided by 1 divided by 1. And we get an unrounded answer of 37.6 cups. Now, since we only had 2 significant figures to start with, our final answer is going to be 38 cups. And so that's what we're going to end up for our final answer here. So let's look at a little bit more after this. So another type we've got here are cases where we're going from SI to English. We're going from metric to English conversions. And so let's start with our case of convert 17 meters to inches. And so to do this, we start off with 17 meters. That's our original value. We now want to figure out how to go from meters to inches. We have meters on one side, we have inches on the other. Question is, how do we get there? Well, anytime you're going to have something that converts from SI to English, from metric to English, or vice versa, you want to go to the section that says English to metric in the upper right-hand corner. These are the only 3 things we have to convert between these two. And if you look at them, that's going to give you a hint. So in this case, meters and inches are both lengths. And so we'll look at these for the purposes of finding length one, and the one that's length is inches to centimeters. So we know that we can go from centimeters to inches. Now, can we go from meters to centimeters? They're both metric. That's no trouble. And so this is going to be the path we're going to take. Meters to centimeters to inches, like that. And so let's finish this guy out. We have meters, 17 meters is on top, so we want to cancel meters on bottom. We want to go to centimeters on top here. Well, in this case, the prefix unit gets a 1. The base unit's going to get whatever the prefix is, so that's centi, which is 100th, 0.01, like that. Continuing this on, we now want to get rid of centimeters, and we want to go to inches. And so we say how many inches are in a centimeter. That's our English to metric. It tells us that 1 inch is 2.54 centimeters. So 1 inch and 2.54, that's 5 centimeters down there. At this point, let's look at our units. Meters has been canceled. Centimeters has been canceled. We've only got inches left, which is what we want. So once again, multiply across the top, divide by the bottom. So we have 17 times 1 times 1 divided by 0.01 divided by 2.54. And in the calculator, that tells us that we get an unrounded answer of 669.29134 inches, which is way too precise. We only had 2 significant figures to start with, so our final answer here is going to be 670 inches. And so that's what we're going to get for that. Alright, so our next one, convert 1 pint to milliliters. And so we're going to start off once again with what we've got here, which is 1 pint. And we'll set up our table. Now we've got to figure out how to get from pints from milliliters, so we're going to start with pints. We're going to end up over here with milliliters somehow. Now pints is English, milliliters is metric. These are measurements of volume, so let's look at our English to metric for a volume one. And you can see we've got quarts to liters. And so somewhere in the middle here we're going to have quarts on the English side. We know we can go to liters on the metric side. So can we go from pints to quarts? Well, we look at our English equivalents, and yes we can. We can go straight from pints to quarts. Nothing in between. We've got that, no trouble. Now, can we go from liters to milliliters? Once again, absolutely. We can go that directly. Nothing in between. So this is going to be our pattern. We want to cancel pints. We want to go to quarts. We say how many pints are in a quart. You look it up, you see there are 2 pints in 1 quart. We then continue our table. We want to cancel quarts. We want to go to liters. And we look at our English to metric conversion, and there are 1.06 quarts in 1 liter. So we've got that right there. Now that we've got that, we want to go from liters to milliliters, cancel liters, go to milliliters. The prefix unit gets a 1. Milli is 1/100th, sorry, 1/1000th, or 10 to the negative third, like that. That should get us to where we want to do. Let's take a look at the units. Pints cancel, quarts cancel, liters cancel. We're only left with milliliters, and that is what we want. So once again, take out the calculators, multiply across the top, divide by the bottom. Across the top, just 1 times 1 times 1 times 1. That's pretty straightforward. So we just want to divide it by 2, divide it by 1.06, and divide it by 10 to the negative third power. And so with that right there, is that should give us 471.69. So what I get for my unrounded answer, 471.69811 milliliters. Once again, way too precise. Our original number only had 1 significant figure, so our final answer here is going to be 500 milliliters. Just like that. So this is how you would do basic SI to English or vice versa type of conversions. We can also, in doing this, do much more complex conversions. So far, most of the ones we've done have been fairly simple. There haven't been a whole lot of different things we have to go between. But let's say we have something like this. How many furlongs are in 3.4 megameters? So we're going to have to go from furlongs into megameters. Question is, how do we get there? Furlongs is English, megameters is metric. So we look at our English to metric. These are furlongs you're probably not familiar with, but if you look at, you see it's under linear equivalences, so that's a length. And so we'll go inches to centimeters. So somewhere in the middle here, we're going to have inches going to centimeters. And now, can we go from centimeters to megameters? Well, in metric, we can always go between by using the base unit. So I can go from centimeters to meters to megameters like that. Now, can I get from furlongs to inches? Well, let's look at furlongs. We see we have furlongs. Only place it shows up goes to rods. So we know that our first step is going to have to be to go to rods. And then, do we have anything else with rods? Well, we see we have rods also go into feet. And that'll work because we can go from feet to inches. So that gives us our basic plan here. Furlongs to rods to feet to inches to centimeters to meters to megameters. Long, but it should be doable. Of course, actually in this case, we actually are doing this the wrong way. We actually want to go the other direction. We want to go from megameters to meters to centimeters to inches to feet to rods to furlongs, because of the fact that we start with 3.4 megameters, which is why you probably ought to start by writing that part out first rather than doing the unit conversion. That way you know which direction that you want to go. So we start off at 3.4 megameters, so we want to cancel megameters. That's going to go on the bottom. We want to go to our first one we said was meters, and so the prefix gets a 1, the prefix unit gets a 1, so then mega is a million, 10 to the 6th power. So we've got that one right there. That takes us from megameters to meters. We then want to go from meters, cancel that, go to centimeters. And so 1 centimeter is how many meters? Centi is 1/100th. 0.01 or 10 to the negative second, whichever one suits your fancy. We then want to go from centimeters to inches. So we put centimeters on bottom, inches on top. 1 inch, it said, was 2.54 centimeters, just like that. We then want to go from inches to feet. Everybody knows this one, 12 inches in 1 foot, at least if you're born and raised in this country. Now, we sort of running out of room here, So normally what you want to do in this case is just sort of take your table and just start it on the next down below it. I usually like to put the line there to remind myself it's a continuation. Just keep in mind whenever you go down to the bottom, you are still multiplying across the top and dividing by things on the bottom. Is that just because it's down below it doesn't mean you're going to do anything mathematically any different to it. So we'll multiply everything on the top on the first line and on the second line and divide by everything on the bottom on the first line and the second line here. But continuing, we had feet on top before. That means we want to put feet on bottom down here, and then we can go from feet to rods, and then we say how many feet in a rod? 16.5 feet in one rod. In one rod. And believe it or not, these are actual units of measure. And then we want to go from rods to furlongs as our final. So rods to furlongs, and it tells us that there are 40 rods in one furlong. Okay, let's make sure our units work out. We start off with megameters. Those cancel. Meters, canceled. Centimeters, canceled. Inches, canceled. Feet, this one does cancel. Sometimes it doesn't look like it, but since feet are on top before, on bottom afterwards, that works. Rods, canceled. The only thing left is furlongs, which is what we want. So then break out your calculator. Be ready to go for that one. And so what we're going to have here, we have 3.4 on top times 10 to the 6th power times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1. So then divided by the bottom, so divided by 1, divided by 0.01, divided by 2.54, divided by 12, divided by 16.5, divided by 40. And so you do that, and you should end up with the right answer. My calculator didn't work that out right the first time. We'll try this again. And okay, 16,901 is what I get out of this. 16,901.29643. That's the unrounded answer of furlongs. But we said look at the original number has two significant figures, so this will just round to 17,000 furlongs. And that's going to be our final answer for this problem. So what you can see is that you can do things that are relatively complex, that are very long conversions. They do work out just the same way as the other ones do. They just take a little more patience and a little more time. Other cases you can run into. Sometimes you will have to do conversions between mixed units. Like, say, the example we have here. We have a car that's traveling at 70 miles per hour, is moving at how many meters per second. So in this case, we have two different units that are mixed in here. We have miles and hours, and we want to go to meters and seconds. Set this up first will give us a hint at how to do this. So we start off by saying we have 70, like this, but and we set up our table. Let's not put the units in just yet, so I can explain it right now. Miles is the first one. It's miles per hour. What does per mean? Per means divided by. And so in this case, so it's going to be miles on top, but since it's miles per hour, miles divided by hour, things we divide by go on bottom. So the hour is going to go on bottom because it's miles divided by hours, and divided by things always go on bottom. So we start off by having this right here. And this will give us a little bit of a hint of what to do here, because now we've got two separate units. And what you want to do is you want to do the conversions of each one separately. And so we have two things going on here. The first one is we have to go from miles into meters. The second one is we have to go from hours into seconds. Well, let's look at, say, the hours and the seconds. That's an easy one because we know that we can go from hours to minutes and then minutes to seconds, and that one's taken care of. The other one's a little more complex. We have an English unit and a metric unit. And so we have to look at, we have inches to centimeters, what we have to do here. And so that means that we know we have centimeters here, inches here. So we'll go from that, but we don't know the number of inches in a mile. We do know the number of feet in a mile. So we can go to miles to feet, feet to inches, inches to centimeters, centimeters to meters, just like that. And that's going to be the path we're going to take. Back to our problem here, 70 miles per hour. You can choose to convert miles to meters first or hours to seconds first. It doesn't matter what order you do them in. Either one is just fine. And so in this case, I'm going to choose to do miles. And so we're going to start off by putting miles on bottom. We're going to go, as it says, to feet first. And so we've got miles to feet right there. And so doing that, we will say, well, how many feet are in a mile? On the sheet, we see there are 5,280 feet in 1 mile, just like that. 1 mile. Continuing this on, we then want to go from feet to inches. So we say feet down here, inches right up here. 12 inches in 1 foot. Continuing on, we now want to go from inches to centimeters. We said in 1 inch there are 2.54 centimeters, as we talked about before. We then can go from centimeters to meters, so centimeters on bottom, meters on top to cancel. And so at this point right here, we say that there's 1 centimeter. There are how many meters here? 0.01, because centi is 1/100th. Now at this point, if we take a look at what we've done with our cancellation, miles are gone, feet gone, inches gone, centimeters gone. We only have meters now. Well, actually we have 2 units. We have meters on top, we have hours on bottom. So right now, if you did the math, you'd get the number of meters per hour. We don't want meters per hour, we want meters per second. So now we have to deal with the hours part. What I usually suggest that you do in this case is you're going to continue your table the same way you did before, but to show that you're now shifting, you're not going to try to cancel a thing in the last blank, you're going to cancel something earlier. I like to do a double line. That just reminds me that, okay, now I'm shifting to a different unit. So we have hours sitting over there on the far left, completely uncanceled. We want to cancel it. Since it's on the bottom, though, to cancel it, we have to put hours on top. And so we put hours on top. We want to go to minutes right here, and so we say in 1 hour there are 60 minutes. We don't have enough room to continue this, so we'll start it on the next line down here. And so we have at this point we've canceled hours. Hours is dead. We have minutes left. Minutes is on bottom, so to get rid of it, we're going to put minutes on top up here, and then we're going to go to seconds, and we know that there are 60 seconds in 1 minute. And so at this point, taking a look at things, that means that our minutes on bottom are going to cancel our minutes on top. The only units we have left are our nice little meters and our seconds down here. And so that means we can take out our calculators and go ahead and do the math. So we multiply across the top, so we have 70 times 5,280 times 12 inches, or times 12, times 2.54 times 0.01 times 1 hour times 1 times 1, and then we divide by what's on bottom, so divided by 1, divided by 1, divided by 1, divided by 1, divided by 60, divided by 60, and putting that into the calculator, we will find that we get an unrounded answer of 31.2928. So 31.2928 meters per second. Now, significant figure-wise, 70 has only 1 significant figure. Trailing zeros are not significant if they're to the left of the decimal. So we'll round this just to 1 significant figure, and so our final answer here is just going to be 30 meters per second. And that's how we set that one up. So that's how we do one that's between things that are in mixed units. There's only one other thing that we want to talk about here before we finish up this lesson, and that is going to be what to do whenever we have units that are raised to powers. Say that we have something like it talks about in this case, is that we have 79 cents per square foot. We talked about how to convert between feet and other things, but what happens if we're converting between square feet? Square feet are an area as opposed to just feet, which are lengths, and so what do we have to do? Well, let's set this up, and that will give us a good hint here. So the first thing we do is we look at what we're given. We're told that it's 79 cents per square foot. So we say 79 cents per. Per we said was divided by. So we have cents on top. Set up our table. We know that we're going to have divided by cents per square foot. So we put feet squared on the bottom. So this is what we have here. So let's figure out how we're going to get from point A to point B. We want to go from cents to cost here. So cost per acre, that's going to be dollars per acre. So the first question is, can we go from cents to dollars? And the answer is yes. We know how many cents are in a dollar. And the next one would be going from square feet to acres. So we're going to start with feet squared. We want to end up in acres, like that. Well, let's take a look. Do we have acres on here? Acres shows up on the left-hand column. It says that 640 acres is 1 square mile. So we could go from acres to miles squared, and if you know the conversion between the two unpowered ones, in this case we know the conversion between feet and miles, they're 5,280 feet in a mile, we also can go from feet squared to miles squared. And we'll get to that in just a second. But this is how you do it. We go from feet squared to miles squared to acres. So let's start this off. Let's do the cents and dollars first because that's going to be fairly easy. And so we want to cancel cents, that's right here. We want to go to dollars, that's right here. There are 100 cents in $1, so that takes care of that right off the bat. So we've got our double line to show that we're done with cents. Those are all canceled out at this point, and we only have dollars left up there. We now want to get rid of feet squared. So to get rid of it, we're going to put feet squared right here. We want to go to miles squared, so we put that right here. Now, let's look at our sheet. It tells us on there, as we said before, there are 5,280 feet in 1 mile. So 5,280 feet in 1 mile. But, and this is where you have to be very, very careful, you have to remember that if what we're doing here is converting from feet squared to miles squared, then we have to square not just the units, we have to square the conversion factors too. And so when we talk about this, we don't want to just have 5,280 feet squared in 1 mile squared. It's 5,280 squared feet squared in 1 squared mile squared. Now the 1 squared is just 1. If we are converting from cubic feet to cubic miles, feet cubed to miles cubed, we'd have to do 5,280 cubed feet cubed over 1 mile cubed. If it was to the 4th power, we'd have to bring the 5,280 to the 4th power. Is that you always have to, anytime you're converting between two things that are raised to powers, but your conversion is not raised to powers, you always have to raise the conversion number, the conversion factor itself, by the same power. So this takes us right here to miles squared. We now want to get rid of miles squared. We want to go to acres. And it tells us that there are 640 acres in 1 square mile. And so that should take us here. Conversion wise, feet squared was on the bottom. Feet squared cancels with itself on top. Miles squared on the bottom. Miles squared cancels on top. We only have dollars per acre at this point. Those are the only 2 units remaining. And so let's go ahead and plug it into the calculator. Multiply across the top. 79 times 1 times 5,280 squared, make sure you square that, times 1 divided by 100, and let's see, then divided by 1 squared, and then divided by 640. And so once you put that into the calculator, that's going to give you a total of 3,412.4. So we get a result here of $34,412.40 is what you get for this. A few cases where the unit goes on front. Now, significant figure-wise, we were told it's 79 cents per square foot. And so in this case, we have 2 significant figures. So rounding this, we actually would end up having $34,000 is going to be our final value for this, because this was 79 cents rounded to the nearest cent. So this is how you'd work out a case where you have raised things to powers. So keep that in mind as you're working through here, and that should finish up this lesson.